All right, welcome to the morning update show. My name is Omari Salisbury. We're joined today. Busy screen today. First of all, though, we got to go to my co-host Treyana Holiday.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Happy Friday out there. Very busy morning indeed, my friends. Thank you all. Welcome to the morning update show. Thanks, busy day.
Yeah, but very busy day. A lot of people, at least here, are people in Seattle know about this Cal Anderson sweep. It occurred this morning around 7:30ish, 8 o'clock. Let me throw it over first to Justin Carter. Justin is from Capitol Hill Seattle blog. You can find that at capitolhillseattle.com. Justin, tell everybody what you saw this morning.
Saw dozens of Seattle police officers entering the park around 8 a.m. this morning. A much anticipated sweep ever since the notice went up that the park was to be cleared Monday morning. Activists have been trying to keep the park filled and protected surrounding the camping areas. But this morning we saw little to no opposition as police rolled in. Used chainsaws to cut through some fencing and barricades that had been put in place, and multiple arrests made as some people tried to either clear belongings the last minute, or few who stood yelled, entered areas where police told them not to, or became entangled with the police action as it moved into the park, and in a sweep that probably really lasted in the core for maybe an hour and a half. The number of arrests now tally somewhere between 10 to 15 that we've heard. No significant injuries reported. A house nearby the park that had been occupied was surrounded by SWAT at one point for a clearance, but it looks like it was entered and there was no opposition found there either. And currently, I think the situation is the park is surrounded by and controlled by police, and parks employees and city employees are starting the process to clean, and the plan is to reopen the park to the public.
Right. And Bobby, do we have Bobby? Sometimes we have Bobby. There we go. So
yeah, I'm here.
So Bobby, Justin just kind of laid out what he saw this morning. You were on the ground. We had a live stream going, the Bobby Cam. What did you see? Although a lot of people saw it, they actually saw what you saw. But just for our people just now joining us for the morning update show.
So basically what happened is this morning we had noticed the cops coming from the north side of the park, setting up a bike line, giving about a 15-minute warning to go ahead and leave the park. Your stuff would be taken out. But the cops came in actually through the east side, and me and one of our security guys was actually inside of the barricaded area. And like Justin said, they came in with a chainsaw, cut a couple holes in there, and they took over the part of the barricaded area pretty quickly. Not a lot of resistance. A couple pepper balls fired. But they actually, took that area over pretty quickly. We were able to actually stay inside the barricaded area to show what was going on. But after that, everybody was pushed out of the barricaded area. That's when the arrests started happening because people would not disperse. So I think their main objective was to just take over that barricaded area and secure it. So,
right,
yeah, it's pretty intense.
Right, and something was real interesting too is that as soon as we backed up to for me to come down here to the studio, and we turned off the cameras, less than like a minute, 2 minutes later, that's when the police made a mass arrest over there. Actually, there's another streamer, Future Crystals has it on his stream, but as soon as the cameras went off, arrested quite a few people who we've seen that have been out there either involved in the homeless advocacy or some of the Seattle protests for months. Like 5 or 6 of them snatched up at one time right there on Denny and Nagel.
Yeah, I believe that what they're arrested for was trespassing, and they had been warned several times to exit out of the park, and they refused. And so once the police came to arrest them, they actually fled the area. And actually, the woman that you had on the press conference last night up at the Yellow House, her name is Allie. And we have her video. We had her video. I'm not sure if it made it to stream, but she was walking on the perimeter just right inside the park, not on the sidewalk, not even the top of the grassy area, but the concrete barrier. And they had asked her to leave the park, and when she didn't listen, 3 officers ran her down about 100 yards and tackled her and arrested her. So a lot of people have been speculating that was simply because she was visible on the press conference last night.
Right. And I want to give you just a little bit more context, Trey, on it first. I know you got some questions. I know you're homeschooling this morning, so you didn't catch a lot of the stream. But I want to throw it over here to Justin real quick, and I'll throw it over to you, Treyana. Justin, like, what's next? We've seen these kind of things play out, man. Really the whole summer, and whether the police, they sweep people out. And they come into the park, and then sometimes a few hours later, the park is occupied again. There's a huge police presence that's out there. It's a lot of police resources on the ground. Clearly, if the police are there to secure the park against protesters, homeless advocates, anybody who wants to enter the park, they're there to secure them. How long do the police stay? As long as the people stay out there?
Yes, looking ahead already is interesting, since it's been a matter of only hours since the start of the clearance. But it is pretty much a secure area at this point for the police, because they are still there in such a large presence. What we've seen in the past, however, is a pretty quick return. And I think that Parks is looking at this situation as first an opportunity to do maintenance in the park and do a heavy cleanup. They've talked about a 3-day intensive cleanup period to remove barricades, remove belongings that were left behind, and tents and those kinds of things. And then the city has communicated that it is hoping to put into place community work efforts to continue cleaning up the park and continue to keep it active. But that doesn't really address how the city plans to actually bar protesters from re-entering the park and establishing what we've seen all along. I don't think we'll see some of the security efforts that Parks tried for a while, the private security that didn't work out. So we might see some new strategies from Seattle Police that we haven't seen around the park yet. And we'll be watching that pretty seriously starting tonight.
That also means that, a consistent presence there by Seattle Police means that resource is there as well. So to be interested to see how that might affect or not affect the citywide response of the Seattle Police Department if you have officers that are there basically guarding the park. I got a statement right here real quick. I'll read that. I'll throw it right over to you, Trey. Let me see if I can bring this in. Just got an email. Kevin sent this over, and Mayor Durkin believes our city can have a mutually shared values. Individuals experiencing homelessness should be in safer spaces like shelters and hotels, especially during the winter. Parks should not be places with illegal and unsafe conduct like fires, makeshift barricades blocking access to residents, and first responders or individuals who are threatening city workers, conducting routine maintenance, and breaking into facilities. They're saying last night there was a fire. Approximately 7:35 a.m., city departments arrived at Callahanson Park because of the recent threats. City staff were joined by Seattle Police Department to secure the area. The area was secured by 8:15 a.m. Most individuals left the park without incident. A small group of individuals remained in the park, and SPD to provide additional information regarding those incidents. Around 8:15 a.m., city workers began cleaning the park. Because of the condition of the park, it's expected to take 6 to 5 hours, initial cleaning, yada, yada. Per the request of the homeowner, SPD also secured a house occupied by activists without incident. Let's see, outreach. For anybody who needs outreach, please call 211. So this is something that interesting. Well, it's a few things there. That's the city thing. But before I go on to what's interesting, especially about that house that SWAT secured, because Seattle Police Department initially had communicated, at least to Kevin Schofield, that they weren't taking action on the house. And we were like live streaming them taking action on the house. But let me throw it over to you, Trey. I know it's information overload, a lot going on. You got any questions?
Oh man, just a lot going on. And obviously, another story for us to be following up on, because I know that a lot of folks out there are wondering what is going to happen to these folks who are unhoused, unsheltered. At the end of the day, when we see that that swell comes back, as you guys were just talking about, that pattern that we have all witnessed here on the Converge platform, it is clear that that is the pattern because the options of housing are limited. So I really want to understand how folks that were out there just recently, like the Urban League with those motels, trying to get people into housing, how we can expedite those processes, because clearly that is the goal, is to make sure that people are actually sheltered in places that are going to keep them safe.
Now we just brought up the stream from David Obelt from Malcontent Tango. You guys might know him as the pole cam guy. So that's the pole cam, the current view right there. And it looks like he's inside of the barricade area. Bobby, what are you seeing from your side? Are any of the homeless advocates, protesters, demonstrators, are they still out there on the street on the south end of the park where you're at?
So a couple different things that I've noticed is that, yeah, there are still protesters out here. There are still activists out here. There are a couple unsheltered people that, you know, they weren't in the park when the park got swept because they were told it wasn't safe to be there. They're actually trying to access their belongings. Police aren't letting anybody in the park. I tried to get them to let me in the park to go ahead and be on the morning show today. And they actually just now recently blocked off Nagel, which is where I'm located at. And we've seen a steady stream of bike police patrolling the perimeter of the park, which I've never seen before every time they've swept before. So there's 3 different bike crews out here right now. And so every 5 minutes, 10 minutes or so, they come by and they have, you know, their words that they exchange with the activists. But right now it's just a lot of work, the park being cleared, lots of departments, bulldozers, backhoes, things of that nature. And I think that's kind of where a lot of the homeless advocates are kind of upset. There is a lot of trash in the park, but there is still a lot of people's belongings. So, and people are not allowed to enter back in the park to grab their belongings.
Right. And one of the things I wanted to clarify as well, because you said departments, and early on in the stream, I said that clearly Seattle Parks Department was out there and Seattle SPU might be out there. That's Seattle Public Utilities, and they are not. So Seattle Public Utilities is not at Cal Anderson Park. That's Seattle Parks Department that's there inside the park.
Well, there's definitely SPU trucks here. Maybe Parks Department is using SPU trucks, but there's definitely Seattle Public Utilities trucks here.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for the update on that. Justin, what's the? I know you said Capitol Hill. It's kind of a mixed bag too, depending upon where exactly people live on the hill. But what was some of the sentiment that you were getting about this sweep leading up to it?
Well, this morning I had the opportunity to speak with a couple of neighbors from around the area of the Yellow House, where there was a lot of concern we're going to see a new version of CHOP. I know there was some talk of this episode being kind of CHOP 2.0 or 3.0 or something, and I know that was not, people didn't like that kind of talk. This was a new thing. A lot of the activists had said, but the House looked like some kind of new, maybe wrinkle in this, where a different kind of stand might take place. And so one thing for just the immediate street, I'm sure this morning, there's probably a lot of relief that situation appears to not be playing out in the direction it was headed. One thing is that letter that you read from the city just goes to the mayor, Jenny Durkin, and her office and City Hall's efforts to make the case for this sweep in the middle of CDC guidelines that are pretty clear that encampments should not be disturbed if there's not enough housing. And if you read that letter, really the point of most of it is, one, the public safety danger from things like the fire that they're reporting from last night, but also they're trying to make the case that the outreach has been adequate and that the shelter is there and being offered. And that's the justification for everything that we're seeing this morning and what we're going to see through the weekend and into Christmas week.
Right. And, speaking of, and let me see, I might be able to share it from my end. Give me 1 second here. Actually, I'll work on this and try to see if I can get it. But we've seen something that we've kind of seen before as far as communication from the Seattle Police Department about what they're communicating to the public, and then what we're actually seeing. Like, we actually saw the movement there on this house, the yellow house there on 11th. That the house that was being occupied. I'm just looking for a tab here, guys. Sorry. And this is it right here. So while we were streaming, we saw the SWAT vehicles there in the middle of the street. It's right there on 11th, but they were communicating over to Kevin Schofield that they'd taken no action on the house. Like, we saw the people go get into the house. And I only bring that up because that's something that we've kind of seen since June, at least since we've been covering this, is that there's one notice that goes out there to the public, and then we turn on our camera and we see something different on the ground.
Yeah, yes. Absolutely. Go ahead, Justin.
Well, just the communications are difficult in this kind of situation, especially. But what we're finding too is that the departments are very conscious from a communication standpoint about how these actions are being portrayed. We even got pressure earlier this week from Seattle Police Department objecting to our reporting of their involvement in the effort and planning of the sweeping, in that they wanted to emphasize that this is a Seattle Parks operation. Well, we all know that the Seattle Police Department is the security apparatus for the city and for Seattle Parks, and any sweep is going to involve police. But yeah, there's a lot of sensitivity in the departments, and especially in the communications elements of the departments, about how this is being talked about and being reported.
Go ahead, Triana.
All I was going to say was that, we hear about this through the communications, but I think the actions are what really strikes many of us, right? And so when we hear about, 15 different arrests, people not being able to get their belongings, we've seen these sweeps actually take a negative stance according to past actions. We've seen it where, tents are getting thrown in dumpsters, everybody's belongings are getting thrown away as they try to clean it up, and they don't allow access for folks to really take what is desirable for them, to try to replace their tents or to take their tents with them. So we see a lot of this kind of action. And unfortunately, I think that even with the communications, there still is the action of, this access. And I think that there may be some talk on both sides where, hey, they were given notice that this was going to happen. But again, they were calling this a protest, not necessarily an encampment. And I do think that both what you just described about the language around sweeping encampments right now at this time when there's not enough housing is key, because this is the issue when we have folks coming right back. Those solutions are not readily available oftentimes, or there's some kind of bureaucratic issue with paperwork or things like that. So I think that there needs to be a lot of other measures to bring down any barriers for housing so that there can be some real sustainable solutions to things like this. I mean, honestly, I as a person and a community member, it's hard to hear that folks are not able to just get their belongings.
Bobby Stills, what did you see people gathering their belongings? I know on our stream, we saw a few people that were able to walk back in there. But as far as the people that were living there, their tents, their belongings, when the order for dispersal came, the 15-minute warning, did you see anybody grabbing anything?
There was a scramble. It was a pretty big scramble. You have to think about some of these people have all of their belongings, and a lot of them have been encamped there for a long time, so they've collected a lot of belongings. We actually, me and our security guy, Big D, actually helped somebody pull their tent over the barricades to get it out. And then when the inner side of the barricade was being penetrated, a gentleman was helping. He was asking for help to get all of his stuff out. And he was actually a unsheltered person that was in the park. So some people, they were just waking up. Well, I don't know what time they went to bed. So the LRAD's pretty loud. So, and I can imagine that anybody a lot of the protesters that are inside of there were willing to help people. I don't think people saw it coming. Some of the people that were camping there just didn't think it was going to happen. So it was a scramble.
Right. And now, Justin, we were both there at that press conference there at the Yellow House yesterday with that activist group who occupied the house there on 11th and Denny. And I know one of the questions that I had, and there was another journalist there, had Seattle makes a big investment in homelessness. I mean, the taxpayers, people, it'd be difficult to say that Seattle is a heartless city around this issue, because there is investment that's made. And one of the things that we were hearing is that maybe the amounts of money that's spent to tackle the homelessness problem, maybe it's not necessarily spent in the right way, or a lot of the end results aren't really reaching the streets. Do you have a take on that?
Sure. That was a big question in the press conference, and the activists addressed it in a manner that you'll hear a lot around the city, and that is these investments are there, and they are expensive, and many of them are misdirected and are aimed more at things like cleanup of garbage and making sure that people can go to a park than they are around making sure people are safe and not living in the cold and in the rain this winter. And so that's, I think, the real challenge, is that the city is spending a lot on homelessness, but the root causes of it, the massive social net and the structures of keeping people from becoming homeless, that is an area where its investment is weak and not strong enough to keep up with the demand and for the need to keep people off the street, keep them out of living in parks. And so it does end up being a kind of a band-aid investment. Chance to put people in hotels and tiny houses are good, and those are important things to do to keep people off the street. But the bigger questions of why we have this kind of poverty and why we have people who are hungry and mental illness and addiction issues, those are the issues that came up in front of the Yellow House yesterday.
Right. And also, the thing is but because when we talk about homelessness, it's kind of, it's kind of polarizing, and the view of it is just one type of person. And that's a person that's living there, maybe unsheltered in a park, or living in one of these encampments and everything else. But Seattle has a much wider homeless problem that isn't so much mainstream. Today, all the big media is there, helicopters in the air and everything else over these people that were there in the park. But there's so many people that are homeless that are living in their cars. Plenty of people that are living in their car, because, we get the comments all the time, all the homeless, they must be on drugs, this and that. There's so many homeless that are working poor. I remember in volunteering at a lot of missions here, you got some people who have to make a decision whether they have their bus fare or they get a meal. And so they pay for the bus, they go get a free meal over at like Union Gospel Mission, the working poor. You have people that are in transitional housing out here. I mean, homelessness is such a larger issue. And I think a lot of times when we when we talk about it, or in general, when the conversations come up, people just think, oh, it's the people in the tents, and people just think that, oh, it's this kind of person and that. And now it would be disingenuous to say that there isn't a percentage of homeless that are suffering from mental illness, that are suffering from drug addiction, and there's chronic homelessness. And I know that was something that the city made an investment in a few months ago. They announced was housing for people that have just experienced chronic homelessness. But do you think, and I'll go right back to you, Justin, on this, do you think that a lot of times when the conversation comes up around homelessness in Seattle, it really is just zeroed in on what people can see with their eyes?
For sure. I mean, so many of the issues are about what we see across the street or on our way to work. And that perception and those issues are valid and important. And I think for the leaders of the city and for activists to think about those kinds of things are kind of some of the keys to connecting with maybe a wider group of support. And at the same time, the perception, though, of how we fix this does need to also expand. And I think that's what we're seeing in this. How many times are we going to clear Cal Anderson before we decide to invest in it in a different way? And my guess is that we're going to be clearing Cal Anderson metaphorically and really clearing it forever until we change the way that we're spending. And so I'm ready to cover this again, unfortunately. And I have a feeling I'll probably see you out there again in the middle of this kind of situation. There's the investments to fix the things that are putting people in these situations are not yet complete, and at best are just getting started.
Right now,
Yeah.
Trey, can I ask you a question, Trey?
Yeah.
So Trey Holiday, one of the things that we've seen from groups like King County Equity Now, which you're a part of, is King County Equity Now saying, hey, you know what? King County Equity Now wants to be a part of the public safety discussion and finding different solutions, community-oriented solutions for public safety. I know I don't say it exactly how KCEN has it written, but is there also now space for more community, for there be more investment in community approaches than approach to homelessness? And just to be fair, there are programs that are funded, community type organizations that are out there, but does this gap that's out there, is there a space for different kinds of community organizations, maybe like some that you guys represent in King County Equity Now, to get involved in this fight around homelessness? Or is this something that lies squarely upon government and government stakeholders?
No, absolutely. Great question. Oh, because there's so many great solutions when you think about the ways that community is looking at homelessness and how to prevent it, how to really control it in a way that brings people up, right? I think that we told a story here on Converge about, a person who says, look, I prefer this. This is where my people are. And there's going to be those types of people. But I think for those that we just described here, those that are the working poor living in their cars, we are now having many discussions in community about housing diversification, how there are so many different ways to actually be housed when it comes to shared ownership models, when it comes to community ownership models. This is why land trust models like what happened at the Liberty Bank building is so key. Homestead Community Land Trust is building affordable home ownership opportunities, and those opportunities are key. But also, I want to clarify here that one of the gaps that we really see when it comes down to affordable housing is having housing that allows for folks that are unsheltered right now to really come in and be able to be housed for the period of time they need in order to get up on their feet, get that job, get money flowing so that they can actually qualify for those 30% income units that we see in affordable housing. There is a gap between like a 0 to 30% area median income that needs to be really heavily invested in, because that is really what you guys are describing here. Those who continue to return, but really are wanting housing opportunities. There is a strong gap that needs heavy investment.
Right. And, safe to say there's definitely, like I said, that the taxpayers of the city of Seattle put investment into trying to find homeless solutions. And that's without a doubt, that there's big money that's there. And so when we talk about investment, every problem could always use more investment. And again, it'd be a question to see how the current investment is actually being used and how efficient it is. We talked about early on in the protest when there was a lot of demands out there. We talked about maybe creating a dashboard. We even suggested that the city, they should go talk to Tableau or somebody and make a dashboard around some of those demands or issues. It'd be interesting if it's not already there, because I don't know everything, but it'd be interesting for the city to have a real-time dashboard to be able to show the citizens of Seattle in real time where the investments around homelessness is going, what's the success rate, and some of everything else. Because a lot of times, in city government, there are underperforming organizations that serve the city, and they continue to keep contracts. So, if we really want to be able to address the issue of homelessness here, then I think that we also have to raise up the amount of accountability all the way around for people that are in that ecosystem. Bobby Stills, you live right there next to Cal Anderson Park. This is 100% your neighborhood. You've gotten to know people who are there in the encampment over the last few months. You've gotten to know quite a few of the organizers over there. What are your feelings about, you think people are going to return back to Cal Anderson? You think it's swept for good? You probably already know the answer to that.
The answer that I say I always get made fun of, but 100%. Since I've lived here, I've lived in this neighborhood, actually my same apartment, for about coming up on 13 years now. There has always been some kind of small, big encampment in here. Also, there's many other smaller parks around here that have encampments. There's many community members that reach out that help take care of those unhoused, unsheltered people. And I think that's one of the main questions with a lot of the activists here and some of the residents in this neighborhood, whether you're for or against it, is how do you actually keep people out of this park? I mean, after the park got swept, we actually saw, there was a guy in there running around the AstroTurf. There were people already taking their dogs in there. Within 10 minutes of them supposedly securing the park, there was already people back in the park. So, how do you actually secure the park and activate the park to where no one can actually build an encampment there? I just don't see that happening. I mean, it's just part of the history of this park. It's a hub of the community. People know they can come here and get resources from the community. And like you said, some of those outreach programs that are getting money from the city, they're not out here all the time, but there are community members that live here that are here all the time and know people by name, let them shower at their house, feed them. There's actually one person right here that's standing right next to me that lives in the neighborhood that comes out here and feeds these people. So I don't see this issue changing unless the city actually does something drastic and makes the changes to impact the unsheltered.
Yeah, I really round this issue right here, because it isn't like there's zero budget on homelessness that's being invested. I mean, this is coming from the taxpayers of the city of Seattle. And so there is an investment that's being made in this, and we got to figure out where it's falling down. I mean, it would be interesting for the city to, and they probably have a report card. We don't have it. I'll reach out to them. Like, what's the report card on this investment? What is the ROI that's going to the taxpayers of the city of Seattle? Because we're investing in this collectively. And so, I mean, man, we need the report card. We need the dashboard. So people can, because without that, and it's all kind of a gray area around homelessness for the average person to understand it. And then you also got different media narratives that drive different kind of situations around homelessness and everything else. Man, I think that more transparency, and also people can see, hey, what's working, what's not working, where we allocate funds and some everything else. How do you feel the level of transparency is around homelessness, Justin?
No more dashboards, please. No more dashboards. I'm a big believer in that solutions here might have to take more physical shape. There are some who have been active at the park who are interested in some kind of mutual aid investment that's available at the park and a resource at the park all the time. And that is something that it might really be time to consider, as much as I'm sure neighbors and developers and property owners around the park would say that this is just catering to the problem. It's pretty clear that everyone here is agreeing that this problem is probably going to come right back. And so one of the new things, and something that could really be tried, is to take like the shelter house structure there by the sports field and put resources there on a continual, regular, permanent basis that are there to address these issues and these opportunities to reach the people that are gathering in this park that's part of the city. And that might be the kind of path forward that is not going to solve everything, and maybe doesn't solve anything beyond Cal Anderson, and maybe doesn't even solve Cal Anderson, but it would be something new and different that could harness some of this energy and start to fix some of even the small things that are adding up every day into these larger problems for the city.
Man,
Right.
yeah, I was just going to say, Justin, you hit the nail on the head, because that's exactly what I was thinking, is that, what we keep seeing is this is where people gather. And at the end of the day, if services need to get to the folks who need them, let's make sure that the services are there. And I think in any spaces where we have these kinds of encampments, I think the investment doesn't need to sit in like departmental offices. I mean, right here on Converge, it's been like an open invitation for Human Services Department to come down. I still don't know exactly what they do if they're not involved in these kinds of situations. So I wonder, again, where taxpayer money is going and how it can be funneled in that way. And I think that you just hit the nail on the head there. I think bringing the services to where people already are, so that people can still enjoy the park, but that folks that need things are right there to be able to get them. I think that there's a win-win situation.
Right. Now, Bobby, I guess this goes to Bobby and Justin, because you guys are both up there on the hill. This is where you live. You're D3 residents. That's District 3, represented by Council Member Shama Sawant. I don't know who's your other representative, your county representative. I'm not sure, but the city representative is Shama Sawant. 2 days ago, Wednesday, we saw King County Council member Gurmai Zahalai, who that's actually not his district. His district is further east and south. But Zahalai was on the ground. We also saw a letter that came from Mosqueda, Councilmember Mosqueda. I'll start with you, Justin. What role does elected officials, especially the ones that represent that district, play in all of this, if any?
One of the real disconnects from the week was when the City Council's Committee on Homelessness met this week, and Cal Anderson, at least in name, never came up throughout the entire committee session. Now, many of the issues around Cal Anderson came up, but nobody addressed the actual situation in the park during the course of discussing legislation. So, what role should they play, and do they play? Someone's got to build legislation. Someone has to write this stuff. Someone has to pass these rules and laws. But there is a need for on the ground connections to this all. And the letter from Teresa Mosqueda was interesting in that her language kind of shifted through the week. In the beginning, she talked a lot about her concerns around the possible lack of shelter space. I've seen her messages to constituents later in the week that are much more clear that she's now saying that there is not enough of this shelter space. But yeah, I think that, it's both they're busy from a legislative standpoint, but there's a need to be on the ground. And it is interesting to see who we've heard from this week, and who we've seen, and who we haven't. As far as priorities in the city go, I've noted it. I don't know whether what especially Councilmember Sawant is looking at in this situation that makes her decide, okay, this is something I want to weigh in or not. But she's been busy with other focuses, bigger issues than maybe than homelessness, like even an issue with India and those kinds of almost global issues this week. And so those kinds of disconnects are I guess just notable at this point, and I'm still sorting them out. I'm interested to kind of see maybe what comes next from some of these offices.
Bobby Steele, same question to you. What kind of elective leadership have you seen there on the ground in District 3? What would you like to see?
I mean, I think everybody would like to see their city council members out here, some public leadership out here on the ground to bear witness to actually what's going on. And if they're not out here on the ground, they definitely would like to hear their opinion, to hear what side of the fence they're leaning on. I think a lot of people haven't been addressing actually this particular issue that's going on at this particular time. A lot of them have talked a lot about homelessness and shelters and stuff like that. But when the axe meets the grinder out here, they're not here. I think that's where a lot of people have an issue with some of the lack of leadership out here, being a little bit more vocal. A lot of people out here have actually called, emailed, written their public leaders, and you don't hear anything back from them. And that's where some of the frustration comes, because they are elected public officials, and the taxpayers are paying their salary, so they would like them to weigh in on these issues.
Right. And, what we saw, no, I don't think anybody in the city of Seattle can say, oh, I didn't know about this. We saw Chief Diaz. We caught him on the street. I'm going to try to call over to him, see if we could get some questions. But we saw the chief of police was there in the park. The mayor out early this morning doing interviews. Seattle Parks Department releasing their statements, and, some of everything else. And so, yeah, it would be interesting just to see where other elected officials, even the ones that don't represent District 3, where they stand on this issue. But yeah, and this is one issue of a larger problem, and where exactly they're at in trying to solve these problems. We're going to take a short break right now. It's been a long morning. When we come back, we're going to talk about some final thoughts moving forward. You're watching the Morning Update Show.
My parents coming over here as refugees meant that they didn't really have anything when they came to America. Having reliable healthcare and having a reliable doctor was really important. Cộng đồng của tôi, trạm y tế của tôi.
我的社区，我的诊所。Mi comunidad, mi clínica.
بلشدة هي بقارها.
My community,
my clinic.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's your man, the Big O. Want to take a moment here, first of all, to say thank you for your support of Converge Media. We definitely wouldn't be here without you. Secondly, I want to thank everybody who is a supporter of Converge Media on Patreon. We definitely appreciate your support. And for those of you might not know, I'll let you know, we operate 100% off of donations. Some donations big, most donations small, but we love all donations all the same. If you haven't done so yet, I want to encourage you to go on our website to whereweconverge.com/donate and subscribe. You click on the Patreon link and you can subscribe for as little as $5 a month. There's higher tiers beyond that as well. And just know that your subscription literally keeps us on the air. Once again, I want to thank you for all your support. All right, welcome back to the morning update show. And when I throw this up here real quick, I'll throw it over to Trey Holiday. So Kevin Schofield, who's listening in over there, appreciate it, Kevin. Let me find this. So Kevin said that there is actually a city dashboard on homelessness, and here it is. But he also notated that it's over 1 year. Can you make that full screen from your side, Alia? It's 1 year. Looks like they're saying there from January 1st, 2019 to September 30, 2019. So there is a dashboard that's there. I know that Justin Carter said, man, listen, no more dashboards. And maybe that might be one of the reasons why this dashboard hasn't been updated in a long time.
I mean, this is, this is one of those things where we see it here. The numbers are clear. I think Justin's right. I think when we talk about, surveys on homelessness and things like that, it's been done. We just saw one that didn't include District 3, by the way, but that definitely had homelessness at the top of that list. So I know that the taxpayers care about this issue and they want to really see sustainable solutions to it. I think one of the things that really puzzles most of us, even with those numbers, I think we still don't understand how, when there's so much money being spent on homelessness, how it's actually resulting in real on the ground solutions. And I like what Bobby said there too about, this is why some folks are wondering what's going on or why they elect certain folks. What are they actually doing with those positions of power? And how come they don't come to the ground when things are going down? I think it's very key, because what we really want to begin to see from elected officials, folks in power in these governmental jobs that do say, look, I'm the director of homelessness, or I'm the director of this or that. We have a lot of different titles. But what is it you're doing with those jobs to really have sustainable solutions? And I think that there's another avenue here where community groups that really have real solutions can begin to work with those elected officials and work with those that are in those positions of authority to really bring about solutions. Because I think that ultimately, I keep on saying it, that's what people really want to see.
Right. And like I said, I'm always smart enough to know what I don't know. Definitely don't know everything about how the city is moving around homelessness. Maybe like nobody does. But what I did want to do is reach out to the city. I've reached out to the mayor's office. Man, they always say start at the top. So I've reached out to the mayor's office. We'll see if we can get a hold of Mayor Jenny Durkin late in the afternoon today, and we can pose a lot of these questions to the mayor directly. And if there's any other, people in the city that operate in this homelessness ecosystem, the platform is yours. People want to hear from you. We'll be more than happy to talk to you so you can explain your position to the citizen stakeholders here in the city of Seattle. We're going to go around the horn here and get everybody's final thoughts before we get out of here as to maybe what's next. We'll start with you, Justin Carter.
So the simple answer to what's next is work in the park, cleaning it up. I saw there, you can see they're cutting away some of the locked up and welded closed bathrooms in the park. The goal, the mayor said at the beginning of the month, was to reopen Cal Anderson and make it now officially a public park again after it's been closed since CHOP. But between the lines and then looking at the reality of the situation. What's next is probably more challenges. Black bloc and anti-police protests are probably still going to continue. There's a good chance they're going to be around and in Cal Anderson Park. They'll be changed, but those kinds of issues are still with us. And so I expect to be continuing to cover this story into 2021, it looks like.
Either on Cal Anderson or this bigger issue here that we're facing in the city around homelessness. I mean, what's next?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think it really comes down to some real solutions. You know, how do we get people who need the housing? How do we get them housing? You know, really following some of the models of, you know, real solutions that we've seen before. We saw Urban League out there with motel vouchers and trying to get folks into hotels for temporary shelter so that they can get their paperwork right to get into permanent shelters. I think we need to see more and more of those solutions. I think we need to up the ante on that in terms of the community grounded solutions. And we definitely need to find more ways to be connecting with those who are getting paid to work on these solutions, connecting with them as well, because it's really about holding them accountable.
All right, Bobby Steels, over to you.
Yeah, you know, I'm gonna you know, stamp what Treyana says, and I think the issue that people on both sides of the fence is they do want accountability. And I know Justin says he doesn't want to see any more dashboards, but I think it's time to start seeing some hard data of where those taxpayer dollars are going, who they're being allocated to, and how people are using those funds, because it just doesn't show. People aren't. You said it yesterday. $1 billion for schools, $1 billion for homelessness. You know what's happening with that money. It's time to start holding these organizations' feet to the fire and actually giving us some numbers back of where that money is being allocated to and how you're using that to affect the issues that are facing the public. And I think people on both sides of the fence, whether you're for or against homelessness or human services, you know, I think they'd like to know where their tax dollars are going. And I think they want their public officials to go ahead and, you know, let them know where they stand too.
All right, and so I just got an email here. It looks like the city very well might be confirming this interview with Mayor Durkin. We'll let everybody know if that's going to occur here later on today. I'll follow up with that when we get off air. I think, you know, this is a conversation, and this is the best thing. And I will say this is the very best thing that we at Converge Media can do, is try to foster an actual real conversation and not a polarizing narrative, but a real conversation, because nothing's going to get solved here if we're just jumping one direction or jumping another direction. I think the very real next steps, if something's going to change here, is, man, people need to start talking the same language, because you hear the city saying, like, man, we're doing so much, and you hear people out and on the street saying that nothing's happening. And so clearly, you know, we need to be able to figure some things out here and get people communicating. Hopefully, a good start with that would be a conversation we can have with City Hall later on today. We will keep you posted. We get that confirmed. I want to thank everybody. I want to thank you, Justin Carter. You're always coming in and to give some insight from the Hill. You know, you can check him out there, CapitolHillSeattle.com. And although it says CapitolHillSeattle.com and Capitol Hill Seattle blog, Justin also does a very excellent job in covering the Central District. So thank you very much for that, sir. Bobby Steels, appreciate you. Bobby was up there, man. We were up there at 7 a.m., 6 a.m. Me, Bobby Steels, Jake Gravbrot, Big D. And want to say thank you to Big D and Jake for their excellent work. You know, they don't end up on camera.
Here, Jake, come say hi.
They got these ugly mugs like me and Bobby over here. So there's Jake Gravbrot, you know what I'm saying? And of course, Trey Holiday. Appreciate you. So we're out of here. If we get a hold of the mayor here in a few hours, we'll definitely tweet that out, let everybody know if we're able to go live with that. Until that, we'll see you again on the morning show. Man, when is that? Monday at 11 a.m. Until then, peace. Lift every voice and sing till earth in heaven ring.
rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun.